This is the Team Objection Podcast for August 16th, 2022, episode 541. This is a different crew.
I'm not Sean.
No.
Sean grew his hair out a lot and grew a beard.
Or Cody changed appearance just a little bit. Just a tiny bit.
Switch sides, too, of the positioning. You know, the GPS is off.
That's right. It was easiest just to put him into Sean's seat. But, no, this is Doug.
Hi.
Some people can't see him because they're still listening to the old version, the podcast version. But this is the crew that we have today because Sean is probably driving somewhere between Phoenix and here right now, coming back from Seattle. And so Doug is already up here because I have some people coming to town this weekend, and we thought, what the hell, why not just have him on the show? He's going to be watching anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense. You could say that Sean could be joining, you know, if someone else is driving, he'd be joining from his phone right now to comment on things. So, Sean, if you're out there, comment. Never mind, he's not watching.
Unless he's driving. Oh my God, do not comment.
Oh, well, it could be interesting.
Oh, well,
It's going to get rough on two specific stretches of the 17, too.
Yeah,
there's no
that's
signal.
True.
So, there's no planner, there's no nothing. What are we going to talk about to fill 45 minutes? I mean, I don't know. It's already been 4, and we haven't done jack shit yet, so I'm not really that worried. I had one main topic I was going to bring up, and we'll see what else it splinters off into. If not, I have a couple emergency things. Like, we can talk about abortion. No.
Whoa.
No.
Oh, God.
We can talk about religion.
Yeah.
Politics?
Too serious of a topic. Plenty of things we could say. Hell, you might even like it. I'm sure there are some people out there that would like a well-reasoned take on it. Then again, we're also like 3 white dudes, so how much do we really have to say about it, or should we have to say?
I speak for all. I speak for all.
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, I don't.
We'll go something lighter and something generic that should catch everybody because it's going to involve multiple forms of media, and by that token, it should get everybody in the net, even Dave. I'm going to take pot shots at Dave because Sean's not here. Somebody has to do it.
That's just, you could drop the bit. You could just leave it. Respect each other. Show.
Dave, let me tell you the ways that you suck.
Yeah.
Do you feel a little more at home now?
Look at me, Doug. Damn it, I'm looking the wrong way. Damn it, I gotta look this way.
Yeah.
No.
It's always backwards. It takes a lot of getting used to.
Backwards.
The topic for today is pretty generic, and yet something I've been thinking about a lot. It's weird because, in a way, Better Call Saul provoked this in me, and I haven't watched any of I've watched a couple episodes of Breaking Bad or any of Better Call Saul. But, of course, the finale was last night, and it got me thinking about this. So you can talk about this, Dave, because you watched it. Don't spoil anything.
I did watch the finale.
But I think Better Call Saul is one of these like tentpole moments because now the entire Breaking Bad franchise is essentially over. In theory, Lord knows they could do something else down the road, but after the show, El Camino, and then the show, it's effectively done. And kind of akin to when Game of Thrones came to an end, it feels like not the end of an era, but just like a changing of the guard of sorts, because with streaming and the traditional TV model changing, it's like media is sort of going through this transformation as well. So even among streaming platforms, for example, we've talked on the show about how we can't really get this consensus. Do we have episodes that drop once a week? Do we drop an entire season at once? Do we drop like 3 episodes and then go weekly? With Better Call Saul ending, what I thought about was this, a question, and then you guys can talk. What is it about media that gets you hooked? More specifically, how do you juggle something that you love, and is there ever enough of it? Like, can you quench a thirst for a game or a movie series or a TV franchise that you're like, man, I just want to watch 3 seasons straight through, I don't give a damn, with being inundated to the point where you don't want to engage anymore? I'm going to give you a small spoiler while you guys think about this, since I didn't tell you this was coming up. Whenever we talk about the MCU, this is going to be my main beef. I have reached the saturation point with the MCU, where I no longer am interested in keeping tabs on everything because there's too much for me. I'll elaborate on that when we get to it. But another example could be like games. For example, Saints Row is coming out with a reboot later this month. And I found myself really excited to play it, even though I don't think it's going to be very good, because we haven't seen a Saints Row game in literally almost a decade. Whereas, there's a new whatever game every year, like Call of Duty, Madden, whatever. So, what is it that really makes you latch on to media to the point where you'll consume it like just voraciously as much as you can? And what is it that turns you away when you're like, this is too much and I need a palate cleanser for a bit?
I have two examples of, and they're opposite sides of the spectrum as far as my examples go here. I mean, what gets me hooked is just generally when it's unique, in depth, and kind of makes me not think necessarily. I don't want to be like, wow, I'm questioning the meaning of life, because no, just it makes me like consider like, wow, I haven't seen this type of media before. This is a different type of action, a different type of storytelling, a different type of camera work, something different. And what keeps me hooked, what makes me have the voracious watching of it, is when it continues to be good. Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad both did that, where it was just throughout 5 seasons of Breaking Bad and 6 seasons of Better Call Saul, I kept watching going, damn it, this is still good. And that's the side of the spectrum where I'm like, I can just watch this continuously, and I'm glad that you continue having good quality come out. On the flip side of that is a show like How I Met Your Mother, for example, which I could watch voraciously and straight through. It was such easy watching, just fun to watch because it was enjoyable. And then it didn't get good anymore. It got bad. And it was just like, oh my God, I'm watching this like a slog through. Like this is a chore to watch now. And so it makes me not want to continue watching. So as long as shows remain good, of good quality, of interest, of continuing to engage and keep me on my toes, that's where for me media consistently keeps me going.
Now as far as me, now I'm not a big TV show watcher. I occasionally will pick something up. So me, it's mostly video games. What gets me hooked on video games? For a while there, I was absolutely hooked and playing Final Fantasy XIV every day because I felt like the story was leading somewhere, and I had that pull. It was like, okay, I need to be prepared. This is a culmination of every bit of the story, and I started halfway through, and I kind of started just find myself drawn more and more in to that. But now that the most recent storyline is concluded, I have fallen off the wayside very, very quickly, and recently picked up Genshin Impact. Started it again halfway through the story, and now I'm caught up completely. And now it's like, okay, and I'm now once again fallen off the wayside into Mass Effect, a game that I had always wanted to play, and playing that a lot. Of course, starting it way, way behind everybody else.
Yeah, there's already been a gap and then one bad game since the trilogy that everybody loves so much came out.
Mm-hmm. So it's like, I feel like I'm always the late adopter, and I take people's recommendations as opposed to figuring it out on my own, pretty much. It's like, okay, I know a little bit about the story. I don't want to know any more, but it's the intriguing, the kind of like the intrigue that gets me.
That's a lot of where I am when it comes to game. I generally jump into things afterward. I rarely jump into something brand new and fresh. I have a hard time devoting time to, man, this thing's coming out that's never been done. I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I'll wait to see if it's worth my time. People will say it's worth my time, and then I'll give it a shot. I mean, BioShock was the same. Mass Effect was the same. Even watching Breaking Bad was the same for me, where people threw so much greatness at this show. I'm like, all right, 3 seasons in, I guess I'd better check it out.
Was Returnal one of those things?
No, Returnal sucks. Hated it.
But Returnal's great. Don't you feel like Sean's back here now?
It's a masterpiece. It is just a perfect storytelling thing. I'm like, what story? I didn't even get to a story. I sucked that much at that game.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on it because I look at it from two perspectives. There are certainly different things that can get you hooked on it, especially with games. You know, it could be just gameplay, even when there is very little or no story. It could just be the story, even when you're like, the gameplay's fine, but I just want to get through it to get to more story. There's lots of different routes to get there. Maybe not so much with movies. You might like different types of movies or TV shows, but that's kind of a different narrative experience. But as the curtain dropped on Better Call Saul last night, it made me think of the topic we're talking about, and also this sort of approach to it as well, which is, I'm sure for a lot of people, last night was kind of like the episode's over, sit back in your seat and kind of just go, huh.
What now?
And like a satisfied, huh? Not a perplexed one. We're not talking about the Sopranos ending here, but just in general, like you've been on this journey for a while now, especially if you go back to the beginning of Breaking Bad. For me, my example would be Persona 5. There are others, but maybe because Persona 5 was so long, getting to the end of it, when the credits hit, I was like, man, like that was a chunk of my life. Not, it's a minuscule percentage in the grand scheme of things, but I remember the credits rolling and the song's pretty good, and just being kind of just like sitting there and not really like just thinking about it, just kind of taking stock of where I stood. So it's a little bit different because it only applies to media that you've completed, game, TV, book, whatever. But what else has provoked that in you over the years?
I'll say, man, I remember I had the same feeling in Persona 5 finishing it. I like sat back and like got goosebumps. I'm like, it's over. Like now what? So almost feeling where it's like, oh my God, it's over. I spent so much time on this. I'll say really quickly too, with the end of Better Call Saul, I am so glad that I never have to use the AMC app on my Apple TV again, because that is the worst piece of garbage that is out there in media right now. A lot of the streaming stuff we complained about years ago with commercials, it was like, okay, you have 4 commercials to pick from. We're going to run 9 commercials in each break, but we only have 4 commercials to cycle through. So I have memorized a lot of these commercials over time. And, oh, you want to pause it and come back to it later? No. What do you mean? You have to sit and watch the whole thing one time through. Otherwise, you can't fast forward or rewind. Sorry. Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it so much. I'm so glad I'm done with it. Anyway.
You're not going to watch the final season of The Walking Dead?
I have not watched The Walking Dead. Yeah. So here's what I found out about The Walking Dead. It's another tangent of apparently the final season has been split into like quarters, basically. There's like a quarter season finale and a half season finale and a 3/4 season finale. And then the final like quarter season is coming. It's like, oh my God. AMC.
That worked so well for Westeros and all that.
Yeah. Or Deathly Hallows or...
It's one of those things that I despise the way AMC markets everything. I despise how they present everything. If it wasn't for Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould presenting this masterpiece of storytelling that was Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, I would never watch that network again. And
not bad, huh?
Their presentation is the worst. I mean, it started with the Glenn and the dumpster thing where they're like, he's dead. Maybe he's not, and then it's just like these little teasers, and I'm just like, oh God, like it felt like I was being led along,
like a Dexter situation. No, maybe he's dead, maybe he's not, and then he's dead, he's alive rather.
I had another situation where it's an interesting thing with things coming to an end. The Orville and Better Call Saul both ended. Potentially both series finales within the span of 2 weeks, and those are like the 2 shows I've been watching religiously over the past 10 weeks, and I'm like, now what do I do? Like, both of these shows ended. I'm like, this was my Monday night and my Wednesday night was Better Call Saul on Mondays and Orville on Wednesdays, and I'm like, now what am I going to do with that time now? I don't know.
Play Returnal.
Play Returnal.
Yeah, right. It's a weird thing to it's a really weird thing to kind of consider, like, oh wow, I put that much time into things. Like, I'd make sure that the kids were in bed and everything was ready to go for the next day, and then at 9:30 I'd sit down and start watching, and then it'd be 10:30 when it's done. It's like, okay, bedtime, let's do it. Like, that was my night.
See, I had with going back to the Persona thing is like, I finished that game, Persona 5 too, and instead of sitting back and saying, now what, I played it fully through 2 more times.
Which some people definitely did. I mean, for some it was a new game plus. For some it was just jumping back from the beginning and then maybe making different choices, different relationship, whatever. It was also strange because, I mean, this is going to be kind of different again for games because I think we rank them more than we can TV because it's so different with like genres and stuff. But I also remember sitting there thinking to myself, not just about the whole experience, but then also, is that going to be the best game I ever play?
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it all downhill from here? And I don't think that's going to be true. And even then, it's kind of silly. But, like, that thought struck me at the time. And it's like, that's pretty rare. Like, the only other thing I can think of recently where I had that was, weirdly enough, with Top Gun Maverick, which, of course, all 3 of us gave a 10 when we reviewed it for the show. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you, like, is that the best movie I'm ever going to see? But I'm like, is this, like, the most satisfied I'm ever going to feel as the credits are rolling on a movie? Like, I enjoyed the experience thoroughly. I thought it was great. Is it, like... a cinematic classic. I mean, if you look at it by like the traditional metrics, no. But nonetheless, it's like I just remember feeling very fulfilled. And that's not an experience you get very often with media, so I feel like you have to cherish it when you do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough
21 out of 21.
Yes, 21 out of 21 would play again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I got lucky with Persona 5 because I finished it, and then within 4 months I was playing Royal. I was like, cool, all right, I get to do this all over again. This is great.
That's true.
That's true.
So,
Strikers.
I mean,
Ah.
yeah, I rolled right into Strikers, and I'm like, oh, all the warm and fuzzies are gone. Aw.
Yeah, this isn't quite the same. It feels the same kind of, but not really.
Yeah, exactly.
Jack Rock says, only
Yeah.
show I ever got hooked on was Xena, and that was because of a huge crush on the leads. It happens.
I mean,
Whatever gets you into a show, honestly. I was at least some part of why I really liked Scrubs because I had a crush on Sarah Chalk. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll admit that 100%. Like, it wasn't the only reason by any means, but it was one of the reasons, sure.
I remember being a kid and like only watching The Wonder Years because Danica McKellar was in it. I'm like, huh, I'm 12. What is this? What is
Yeah.
this that I'm feeling right now?
Which happened to all sorts of folks, I'm sure. I'm sure like Topanga was one of those.
The girl from Married with Children.
Yeah, for a little bit younger than us or a little bit older than us generation. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's definitely those examples. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can get you hooked. Certain acting performances. I've watched. Hell, even in sports, you can make the comparison where, like, I'll watch some dog shit team because there's one athlete in particular who stands out, like the Angels with Mike Trout and Ohtani, for example. But there can be any number of reasons, I suppose, and all of them are pretty valid if it's what gets you really interested. I don't know. TV has never really grabbed me that way, and I'm not sure why that is. There have definitely been shows that I've watched and been eager to keep going through, but nothing I felt like was like must-see TV.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. TV is the one media that I've actually felt that with, and I think a lot of it comes from the episodic format, coming from the idea of when there's a continuous story, you have these breaks in between, so you can kind of process and digest and anticipate. And when there's good drama shows that you have that feeling in between of like, oh man, that was a crazy ending. I don't know what's going to happen next. I feel this level of excitement to watch. So I feel like that is the best way of presenting television is not all at once because of that anticipation format. I watched Breaking Bad the first 4 seasons after they had come out, so I got to watch them back to back to back and just like plow through it. And while satisfying, it was also like, okay, man, what happened at the end of season 4? Or happened at the end of season 3? Well, turn on the next episode. Let's find out instead of waiting 6 months.
There's no anticipation. There's no discussion with like, oh my god, did you see that? That was nuts.
Yeah.
It's all like, oh, I just plowed through the entire thing, and everything has been answered. There's nothing to discuss with anybody. Okay, I guess.
I'm imagining somebody like shotgunning Dynasty. So it's who shot JR, and then they just click the next episode and you find out instantly. When that was something that basically transfixed the nation for months. Now, it's obviously a very different era than then, so I'm not even trying to make like a streaming to that comparison. It's not fair, but it just shows how far we've come, especially accelerated by the last 10 or 15 years to where, I don't know, I mean, maybe it's because I'm a traditional like you guys, but like, I don't want to see any more things drop as a whole season at once. I understand that some people enjoy it that way, and I guess, to me, it's like you could just wait till the end and binge it, but it's like it misses so much of a chance to make a cultural impact if it's just, and here's a whole season, because then where's the water cooler talk, if you will?
Exactly. That's how I felt with both of the shows that I've liked the most so far, with the Orville and Better Call Saul, because I got to watch it Monday night. And then Tuesday, I could read the reviews. I could read what people think about it, watch YouTube videos about people breaking down certain scenes because there's so much detail packed in there. I could be like, oh, wow, I did miss that. And I could feel like I could watch that, get a deeper meaning, and then have more anticipation for the next week's episode. God, I mean, I remember examples of Star Trek The Next Generation when I was a kid. There was the season 3 trailer where Picard got turned into a Borg. And it was like, that's where they left it for an entire summer. And it's like, oh shit, are they gonna kill Picard? Is Picard like, what is gonna happen? Like, nobody knew. And there was this sense of, I don't know, camaraderie almost. It's like, man, I'm really excited. What do you think's going to happen? I mean, The Simpsons did that with Who Shot Mr. Burns. Wow, who do you think shot him? Like a whole summer of people being like, hey, did you watch that? Like, what do you think? Like people talking about things. And I love that sense of camaraderie when you drop everything at once that just can't happen because it's like, wait, what episode are you on? Oh shit, which one was that? Okay, well, hold on. Okay, I can talk about this one, but you're going to see something that, okay, no, hold on, I don't want to talk. And like, you lose all of that conversation.
It's almost impossible to even pull that kind of thing off nowadays too, because we have the internet and we can just look up, is there a contract dispute?
Yeah. IMDb, who's in the next season? Like all of a sudden you just look, oh, who's guest star instead of starring? Like, oh, well, I guess they're getting killed this episode. Like it sucks. Like I specifically don't go into those types of things for that reason, because when certain characters die, like they did in Breaking Better Call Saul, for example, I didn't want to see what episode they were not going to be in next. Why would I want to look that up? I want to be surprised.
And, we've talked about spoilers in the past on this on multiple occasions. This is one of those spots where it's also annoying to me because, look, we can quibble on what the fair window is for spoilers on something, but when an entire season drops at once and someone marathons it and then starts posting about it, so let's say it's 10 episodes that are an hour apiece of whatever the hell show. So 10 hours after the series releases, now people are starting to post about it on social media. I'm like, that's like, you just sped run to the end, and it's not like you're really interested in discussion at that point because the number of people that also have done it at that pace is so minuscule that it's really just about showing off now. Mm-hmm. It's not about having a discussion. It's, oh my God, I saw this thing. I can't believe this happened. Can you? And almost like a power play of, I want to tell you about this so that in some way it like lessens it for you. And that, I mean, again, I don't know what the answer is. People are going to go through an entire season worth of episodes at their own pace if it drops at once. But I know the answer is not literally the runtime of the series.
Mm-hmm.
That's I cannot even imagine doing, like, maybe it's my own situation of where I'm like, if I stay up all night watching this show, I'm screwed tomorrow. I can't just sleep all day tomorrow like some people can in certain situations. So yeah, I can't do that. So I guess I'll just watch it when I can, one episode at a time, basically. So yeah,
the live discussions, as far as when you go on Reddit and everybody's just sitting there waiting for the episode to drop, and you just it's almost like a camaraderie kind of thing. It's like, oh my God, the live discussion. It's like watching it in a theater with millions of people. Those parts of watching it is pretty fun.
Yeah, but if anything, that sort of bolsters the argument for the weekly then, because then each week, if you want to, you have a platform that you can sit there and watch it on and be like, all right, cool, there's some other people watching it at the same time as me, and you can interact with them. Maybe you don't have people in your household, or maybe you do and they don't want to watch the same shows, but at least that way it's like, okay, maybe every Tuesday at 7, I'm going to hop on because this episode's premiering and we'll see what people are saying, because that's cool. With a whole series drop at once, again, if you're not watching it minute for minute, then you're falling behind other people in the live thread, so now there's a huge risk of spoilers the second you're not live with everybody else.
That's something I really liked having with sporting events, because even though tape delay, the delay that comes through on a live broadcast, pretty much everybody's watching it live. So, follow along on Reddit or something like that, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're all watching the Suns game together. And if I just type Booker! Everyone knows what I'm talking about in that moment, which is super cool. So you feel this, again, sense of camaraderie. I don't know. I like sharing experiences with people. That's so much more fun than doing it by myself, I think.
Disc golf is going through a midlife crisis or whatever right now with that, because its most popular format is post-produced. So there's a company called Jomez. They do like really good production work. It looks stellar considering the crew they're working with. But they record the rounds, and then that night they do commentary and they release first thing in the morning. So it's, 12 to 18 hours after an event has ended. People like that quite a bit because they condense these into like 40 or 50-minute rounds instead of 4 or 5 hours, because it's just the shots and maybe a couple small side things. They cut out all the filler because, just like in golf, you're going to throw a shot and guess what? You got to walk to that shot, so it's going to be some downtime. So it's really, really popular, especially for people with tight schedules. But as mentioned, the biggest thing that they cannot control or fix is the live argument. So we talked on the show about James Conrad's shot at Worlds last year. That was a massive moment that everyone was talking about. And hell, it was even a challenge for them in the post-produce because they had to pretend like they didn't know it was coming, even though, hell, you can see 2 of the 3 commentators in one of the shots of the footage from the thing happening. So that they're faking this. They have to for the sake of it. But there is nothing like catching something live in the moment. So to your point, sports obviously the primary example of that, but a huge watch party for anything, whether it was the Better Call Saul finale, the end of Game of Thrones, etc. There's just something about that buzz you can't quite duplicate any other way.
No, it's the shared experience. It's just all where it comes from. It's just the idea that people enjoy something along with you and are passionate about the same thing with you for the same reasons. It's just, I don't know, there's no better feeling. I mean, Chris and I have bonded over the Suns for 20 years now. We've known each other, 23 years now, basically, like talking about the Suns, talking about different video games. I mean, one of the first things I remember Chris doing is bring his N64 for me. Like, all right, you're playing Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. Let's do this. And like, we did that, and it was a bonding moment, and we've been doing this for over 20 years now. And it's just, I don't know, we got to share experiences again, and it works.
It's kind of why one of the things that drove me into Final Fantasy 14 is because I was sitting here enjoying the experience with the 4 people we play with, Nick, Mike, Chris, and myself. And it's like we're sitting here, we're enjoying this experience together, and when something crazy happens, it's like the little bit of desync that happens. Usually Chris's goes a little bit faster, and then I hear his reaction. I'm like, oh, something's coming up here. But it's just like maybe a split second, but it is still that shared experience, which is nice.
I suppose that happens to us in Suns games sometimes too. If we're not sharing my stream with Dave, he's watching it on his own. We sync it up decently well, but we're not trying to be like frame perfect. So a lot of times it could be like I'll hear him gasp about something, and then a second later, somebody throws it out of bounds, and I'm like, aha. But it's never like that much of a detraction. It's usually fine. But
yeah.
And hell, even when we're not watching it together, I mean, I called Dave seconds after the Valley Oop. It would have been, well, it was more like a minute. It would have been seconds, but I called the wrong Dave. Yeah.
I was at a bar and see Chris calling. I'm like, well, shit, I got to answer this. So, yeah, Chris, yeah, do you think that counted? Yeah, it counted. I think it totally did. Hold on, people are cheering too loud. What?
Audio cut out.
Oh, yeah.
Should be fine.
I'm here. Hi.
Let us know. Let us know, Josh. But yeah, I mean, that moment of shared experience is half the journey for me. Because, yeah, I can watch something on my own and still like it quite a bit. I've done that with several shows. But it's not really something that happens all that often. Sports, obviously, we never know. We might know at some point whether, like, a show is really building up to a cool moment. Like, okay, this finale is going to be awesome. We got to make sure we tune in and watch. I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be cool. Sports, yes, you build towards big playoff moments, title moments, etc. But sometimes, like Booker's 80-point or 70-point game, it was a random game in the middle of the season, and it took until about the late third quarter for me to start letting people know, like, we need to pay attention because a thing is happening. And then it was super cool when it did because we were all keeping tabs on it. So, like, I don't know. Those are the type of things I kind of live for. It's nice that there are ways that media can do it. I wish it was more often, but maybe it wouldn't be as special if it was.
Except me, who was seeing a movie. Stunningly enough, I was at a movie theater, walking out of the movie theater, and I get a voicemail from Chris like, you should probably turn on this game. I'm like, turn on the what? Why? We're losing. Like, we suck this year. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I remember I pulled Sean out of his bedroom. He was doing something in the old house. Him and Maisie were watching something. I don't remember what. And being like, yeah, Booker has like 41 midway through the third or something. Like, we had no idea it was going to go for 70, but 50 plus was something we hadn't seen since Amari.
Yeah. 2009,
I think, 2010.
Yep.
Tony Delk did it at one point, but I think that was before Amari. So like, we hadn't seen that kind of stuff in a while. So the fact that we could all be like, oh shit, Randy Johnson's perfect game. I called my dad.
Called me
in like the 5th or 6th inning and was like, hey, that's the only one I've ever watched live. So to be able to watch that, and especially knowing that was sort of towards the end of Johnson's career, that was his last Cy Young worthy season. He didn't win it because the team sucked so bad. He was 16-14 that year because they were a 100+ loss team. But to watch like the tail end of like transcendent greatness, like that, those type of things, man, just can't get enough.
Yeah. No kidding.
So that was what came to mind. I don't care about Better Call Saul. I'm sure it's really, really good. At some point, maybe I'll take the plunge, but at the very least, those were the kind of things, because I saw people talking about it so reverently, where it was like, I can see this is one of those things. And by the way, it's just nice to see them stick the landing. Unlike Game of Thrones, unlike How I Met Your Mother, just to name two examples we've thought of in this very episode, to see them have an ending that people felt was appropriate. It wasn't even necessarily happy per se. I think my impression was it was in a few ways, but like fitting, appropriate, worthwhile of the journey. How nice to have the viewer's patience and following rewarded in a positive way.
Mm-hmm. Without any spoilers, the characters acted in a way that was extremely believable. It wasn't like all of a sudden that someone decided to change who they were completely for no reason. It was like, yeah, I can see why he'd go down that direction, basically. And it's fitting when you have 6 seasons worth of character development, which is the most important thing in a show like this, and the characters stay true to themselves.
I'm going to need you to entirely change your personality just to fit this one narrative. We need you to fit, and because we can't think of it any other way to make it work.
It was just really crazy in the end when they finally caught Saul, and then he Terminator gelled through the bars to escape prison. It was like, whoa! Did not see that coming.
Yeah. Like, I knew he had to be in Breaking Bad, but that was not the route I thought we were going to take to get there. Holy cannoli.
Anyway, I have a separate thing that's just minuscule. I got to travel for the first time for work in about 3 years, which was just crazy to me. It was a sign of normalcy, I guess, along with the fact that the CDC recently kind of just said, eh. So it's just overall, I mean, Chris and Sean and I have had so many COVID episodes, talked about different things throughout the pandemic, throughout the isolation at home, throughout everything. I mean, I don't know how you guys are, if you guys have been the same, but I've just kind of been like, all right, well, if I get it, I get it. I'm just kind of live the way I lived before. I haven't really put any restrictions on myself. I haven't. If I felt sick, I'll put a mask on just because I don't want to get other people sick for the most part. But I like hearing the CD say that is kind of the official end, I guess. But also and for the last year, I haven't really worried about anything either. So it's an interesting feeling, at least.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it has mirrored the national sentiment, the overall one, not the folks that were never going to wear a mask but it's become pretty clear that most people don't care anymore. I'm not even necessarily saying they're wrong not to. In my position, maybe I should take a more conservative stance on it, but I'm just going to tell it like it is. So like, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm not actively out there trying to get it. I'm not really changing the way that I live. Even before, it wasn't like I was doing a ton of things in public places. And we are now looking at doing a concert in March. I'm going to be on an airplane a week from today. Like things are going to be happening again. And I'm boosted. Will I get another booster? I don't know. At this point, I'm technically not supposed to. I haven't technically been cleared for a second booster from the CDC. It's still supposed to be some at-risk individuals. But like, I'm not saying I'm over it, but at the very least, it does sort of feel like, even if I haven't, just about everybody has kind of just gotten back to normal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was hardly ever affected about it at work. Sure. The only thing that was missing was a lot of people weren't there. They were all working remote when they could. I unfortunately did not have a job where I could work 100% remote. I could do most of everything that I needed to do. But if there was something that I needed to do on site, I needed to be there. But the thing that I missed the most probably from this entire experience is being able to be by myself and work. The feeling of not having everybody alone or everybody around was nice. It makes me almost feel a little bit claustrophobic now, having everybody around. It's kind of weird. It never felt this way before. I enjoyed crowds before, but now it's like, why are y'all in my business?
It's almost like a shock type of feeling of just like hey, wait, that's not supposed to happen anymore. Like this been trained almost. Crowds are bad, but I don't know, like. maybe I know I speak for the minority or I speak for the sense of a place of privilege. I got COVID. I felt nothing, basically. Had I not had a COVID test, I never would have known. I would have been out, which happens with a lot of different viruses that our bodies as a society have gotten used to. This one still has causes problems. It has and will continue to, as Chakrak says in the quote in the chat, COVID's a part of our lives and it's not going anywhere. It's true. So at this point, I don't know what else to do other than, all right, we're back. Like, move along. If you get sick, do your best. Like, if you find out you're positive, do your best to make sure that you don't get other people sick. But that's that.
I think at this point, I mean, Jack Rock's right. We've kind of all said the same thing to an extent, but like, to Doug's point, I am a little bit more cognizant of situations where people are standing closer than they should. And I'm not even concerned about that from a COVID perspective. I thought it was kind of nice when I had, not having people breathe down my neck at the grocery store. Like, you don't have to be right up on me. You can step a little bit further back. And I don't really care about the COVID aspect of that or whether you're sick with anything. I just don't need you that close to my space. But do I wear a mask in the store? No. And even when Coconino County briefly went back into high transmission a few weeks ago, we're back down to low again already, but was I ever really concerned? I can't say I was. And, again, that's sort of a privilege, like Dave mentioned, where I'm not at risk. I'm not really that worried about it. I have a good immune system. I never really got sick much in the past to begin with. And I'm immunized and boosted, so I'm not super worried about what happens if I did happen to get it. But I guess it's still in the back of my mind. Even when we were looking at the concert, I was like, what if it's gotten worse again by March or something? And it's like, well, who knows? But you can't really plan 9 months ahead anyways. So let's just do our best.
Well, like I've like I said, the past year I've kind of gotten back to normalcy. Courtney went and ran a half marathon in Las Vegas, which is a very weird dichotomy of when we flew to Vegas. So we flew to Vegas throughout the airport and on the plane. This was in February. You had to have a mask on the plane the entire time, and throughout the airport you had to have a mask on the entire time. Then you got to Las Vegas and took the mask off, and I'm like, oh well, I'm going to be at a craps table around 10 other people. Like, it was just such a weird feeling of like, hey, let's be super safe in this area. Okay, now I'm in Vegas and all the rules are out the window, basically.
Yeah.
But then on the flip side of that, I just flew, for my work trip, no masks, no more requirements. No, a couple of people on the plane had masks on, which is fine. I have no issue if anyone decides to wear a mask for their own reasons. I don't have a problem with it. I don't understand why anyone would have a problem with it. But it wasn't required anymore, so most people didn't. I didn't have to wear a mask in the airport. I'm going to New York City in November because Courtney's running the New York City Marathon in November. Probably not going to be masks that's required there on that flight or anything more either. New York is one of those cities that was the most heavy-handed, so it's just kind of run its course almost, I guess.
The only thing I can think of for the first situation is maybe they didn't want you spreading it to the airplane staff, so because they have the opportunity to spread it to a lot more people.
Yep.
That's the only thing I could think of. But
whereas on the Strip, you're going to get 18 venereal diseases anyways, so who cares anymore?
You can't get venereal disease just walking down the Strip. I mean,
as dirty as the Strip can be at times, I don't know that I believe you.
Well, what's more fun is I don't think you've been to Vegas, Chris, and say legalized marijuana recreationally.
No.
It's the smell that gets you now.
Oh,
I believe it, 100%. But to your point, I mean, hell, even though the NBA was an example, they were among the leaders in sports about trying to be as forward as possible with COVID mitigation. But even then, you had to kind of recognize, okay, everyone on the bench is wearing them, but they're coming off the floor and putting on a mask when they were just breathing on somebody they were guarding from literally 6 inches away. Mm-hmm. So, is it really helping? Maybe. It's not hurting. Is it kind of performative? Probably that too. Yeah.
And so, most coaches have their mask down here. Monty Williams being the prime example of that.
Yeah, and we can't even be like, oh, the Suns didn't. No, yeah. And will I wear a mask next week on my flight? I'm thinking about it. I don't really know if I'm going to be too concerned one way or the other. And like Dave said, I'm not going to be concerned if other people don't. But I might, just because that's one of the spots where you're going to be the most densely packed. It's also one of the spots with the best ventilation. Airplanes had to go to great lengths to make sure that they were filtering air properly, because otherwise everyone's going to get it, because you're on a tiny compact space for 3-6 hours with other people. Yeah, so the spread was a huge concern. It's not so much now. So I mean, I'm going to be taking 2 flights. I did fly last year once, but of course that was in October when we were kind of in a downswing. Haven't traveled for work since before the pandemic. Probably won't be again anytime soon. But it is sort of nice that for the most part, and I know monkeypox is also a thing at the moment, but we'll see how serious that becomes. But for the most part, you can kind of do everything you want to do.
Yeah.
No. Monkeypox is still a joke. We're still spreading memes about it's a joke.
I suppose some people still don't understand what it is, but
it's not a joke, but it's also harder to transmit than COVID ever was, and we pretty much already have vaccines for it, like now, and treatment for it now. It's just we kind of bungled the rollout of those things, so now we just got to build our supply up.
And it's also not as deadly.
Yeah, exactly. It's just painful.
It's bad for 2 to 4 weeks. So I'm not saying it's breeze, but the biggest issue with COVID was it's just destroying everyone's lungs, especially if they're immunocompromised. Like, good luck. So we had to find something drastic. Whether it's monkeypox or COVID or just the regular old flu or the common cold that we can't seem to get rid of. To a certain extent, those are just things you have to prepare for, and take vitamin C, wash your hands. Hopefully we learn some of those lessons from the pandemics that people are a little bit more hygienic. I'm not expecting great things, but just a smidge, like cough into your goddamn elbow. Stop coughing all over the goddamn place.
If I have to sneeze, at work, I wear a sport coat most times. I wear a blazer. Every time I have to sneeze, I pull the blazer up and sneeze like into the blazer because I'm like, why would I want my sneeze going everywhere? Like, it's just common sense.
Gross.
You don't want to sneeze in your hands. You might touch stuff. That defeats the purpose. Yeah, you just go into the crook of your elbow or something.
Yeah, it seems so simple. I don't know. I don't understand people at all.
I want to believe that coming out of this, everybody has a better general sense of, basic niceties of don't be around people when you're sick. And doing exactly that, coughing into a place that doesn't actively spread these particles. But we'll see. I mean,
I have seen it a bit. How much of that is just the social stigma of not wanting the people in the store to all turn and look in your direction? And how much of that is actually people sort of having learned something from this? I don't know. Could be either or. But, I'm optimistic a little. Not really my lane. I'm not often optimistic. But I think at the very least people realize, like, yeah, maybe I don't believe in masks. And I think Anthony Fauci's a fraud. But at the very least, maybe I should wash my hands and, like, cover my mouth. That's not hard.
Or more so, the social stigma of missing work due to illness is a little bit removed.
Yeah.
Or at least there's an option C. You used to be, for many industries, there's now an option C. It used to be either A, go to work when you're sick, or B, stay home and not work and maybe don't get paid if you don't have sick pay. Now there's option C. Like, I don't feel so great. It's not going to prevent me from working, so I'll just stay home and work from home today because I can still get stuff done, but I don't want to get anybody else sick. Great. I'm glad we have this middle ground. This is wonderful for a lot of industry.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I wish that more industries would pick up is like, hey, yeah, by the way, we have this amazing infrastructure. People around the United States now have gigabit internet, not everywhere, mind you, and that's another discussion for another time. We have we have this amazing infrastructure that anybody could work from home. We should be pushing that as a means to also, because not having to use sick days for days that I was genuinely feeling under the weather, that's nice. I can still get work done. I don't get anybody else sick, and I feel better by not being there, to be honest. So
yeah.
Not only do you get to feel better faster, meaning more productivity, you also get to do some work instead of no work. And that means that you don't have to play catch up when you get back to work. And the company still gets the productivity out of it. It's a win-win-win all across the board, it seems.
Yeah, poor Dave. He doesn't have gigabit internet in his small town of, let me check my notes here, Phoenix.
7 million people in this city.
Yeah, I mean, in addition to the two that Dave mentioned, which is, whether you had hours and were afraid to take them or didn't and then wouldn't get paid if you had to sit out of work, there was also the fear of being fired if you had to miss, everybody takes like a sick day or two, but maybe you had something that was a little bit more serious, like a flu that really knocked you on your ass. And there were certainly stories from people that were around you of, well, I missed more than a week and I started to hear whispers about like, am I even going to be retained at all? And that also seems to have lessened somewhat. I'm not saying you can take a month off to be sick just out of nowhere, but if you have legitimate health issues, I think because of the climate that COVID created, there's a little bit more understanding. It's still not great, and there's always going to be the onus on businesses to try and be accommodating because, if you're doing your job correctly, you should be valued and needed. It shouldn't be, oh, Dave missed a month. Whatever, it doesn't matter. He doesn't do anything anyways. However, there also should be the flexibility to make sure people are taken care of when they really need it.
But Chris, you're missing out on the office politics and office lifestyle.
And the water cooler discussions of Better Call Saul.
Mm-hmm.
Of which I had none of today. It was kind of, nobody I know watches that show. It's so sad.
And plenty of people did. It's just not your circle, I guess.
Apparently not. It was something that I forgot what I was going to say because you brought up the water. It's gone.
Right.
It's gone.
You have about 45 seconds.
Okay. It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's gone.
Oh,
It's
okay.
out of my head.
Because I was going to bring the episode to a close. A little bit shorter than normal, but not really. Plus, we went long the last 2 weeks, so I don't feel all that bad. As far as upcoming programming, I'm not entirely sure what's happening. I'm going to be gone the next 2 Tuesdays because I forgot that I booked a flight on a Tuesday and not a Wednesday to leave. So my goal is to record a show and then air it at the 7:30 slot, probably next Tuesday, the 23rd, and then we'll be off the week of the 30th, and then back the first week of September, right after Labor Day, with a regular episode. Might even be a trivia one. Depends on how much I can get done either before or after I get back, since I'm going to be gone for like 9 days. But that's kind of the rough plan at the moment. I'll put a post up on the community tab on the channel just to let people know what's going on. And of course, you'll know when an episode drops in iTunes or Stitcher, etc., because it'll show up and download automatically. So you know what's up. But
I'll go poof, here it is. Hi, come listen to us.
exactly. Sean will be back on the show at some point, allegedly.
Nope.
All these things are happening. Doug, thank you for being here. There were no Nazis in chat, so you were fine.
Ooh, man. Lucky.
This time. I was watching.
Yes. I don't know, like a couple weeks ago I missed. I don't know if there was somebody that was there that...
We've only had one other spam comment recently. I think it was on one where you weren't there, but it was just the one. It didn't like flood. It was just
good.
clearly 18 and plus. You click this link, and I'm like, ha ha ha. Yeah, no.
Bye-bye.
But everything seemed to be okay.
Yeah, good.
That's the end of the episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork. We have recorded the entirety of the end of the Ace Attorney game, so it's just going to be airing over the next 6 weeks, I believe. It's all done. It's in the hopper. It's in the can. I have them all scheduled. So regular episodes have resumed. They will continue. We'll get back to FIFA as soon as Sean's not dead. Go to the YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell. We'll see you next time.
See you.